Hello, and welcome to Networking with Michelle. You are tuned into the podcast dedicated to enhancing your professional development by nurturing relationships and navigating the professional maze. Michelle Gomez is the founder of Line 25 Consulting and author of the book Network, Navigate, and Nurture, The Equation to Strategic Networking. Here now is Michelle Gomez.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Networking with Michelle. Today's guest is Dr. Reagan Flowers. Definitely a treat to have her today. If you're in Houston, you definitely know her and have been able to recognize her work. My first experience with her was November at the Houston Area Urban League Young Professionals Networking Brunch. And she was just able to share some great insight on how she has started CSTEM. CSTEM is Communication, Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics, Teacher, and Student Support Services Incorporated, the first integrated Pre K through 12th grade STEM enrichment program in the nation. She has gone on to win accolades, speaking engagements. She is the leading authority when it comes to STEM education. So without any further ado, Dr. Reagan Flowers, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for having me. I am doing well today. No complaints on my end. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Always enjoying interviewing people, especially people that I'm able to admire from afar. And it just, this platform definitely serves its purpose. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So CSTEM, so many things I can say about it. But before we get into the greatness of the CSTEM program that you offer, how did you get to this point? What has been your career journey thus far?
Wow. Yes, getting to this point. In life, you have choices, to make every day, right? And when you're at work and you're doing, your everyday grind, there are things that work well, and then there are things that don't work as well. And that was what happened to me as a classroom teacher. I realized that I was not as phenomenal as I thought I was, and nor were my students that I had been preparing to go off to college and pursue careers in STEM. And I knew that some things needed to change. I didn't know quite what that was, and I had an option. I could have left things alone as they were as a classroom teacher, or I could try to come up with a solution. I could still get paid. I could still go to work every day and get a great assessment and not do anything extra. But I decided to put forth some time to research this problem of student engagement, particularly with minorities in math and science, and trying to find ways to engage kids in this higher level type of thinking and finding a joy and seeing themselves in that space. And so that's what happened. I got possessed by this bug of trying to find a solution. And, here I am nearly 15 years later, still dealing and working in this space because it's truly a passion.
That's awesome. I believe many entrepreneurs, that's how we start, right? We see there's a problem and we want to resolve the problem, and we become, passionate about it. And, we just keep going along until we can get the resolution that we're looking to. And hopefully, of course, the world can benefit from that. I know in 1996, I was in Atlanta. I think I was 8th or 9th grade around that time. Of course, I was a teenager, but I clearly remember CSTEM, or STEM, I should say, just being the major push. And it's pretty much been that way going on 20 years, at least in my lifetime. And what do you think it is about CSTEM that is just driving the nation to go that way?
Right. So STEM, it is the buzz. And I think, it may have been around 2005 or 2006, somewhere around there, that the acronym really started to stick with people having discussions around STEM and really promoting and pushing programs to engage students around that. STEM is the economic opportunity space. It is what drives our country. I don't care what you do. I don't care how you're living, what you're doing. STEM is connected to all of us. For us ladies, if it's the makeup that we're wearing, the lipstick, or the computers that we're using, when you look at how petroleum is used to make plastics and different cosmetics that we're using, this our everyday life. And so the country understands the importance and understands that to stay ahead and to be a nation, continue to be a nation where we are on top and that others around the world want to be a part of what we're doing, we have to focus heavily and aggressively in STEM. And we've got to tap into the untapped potential that exists, and that being minorities. We've got just such a disproportionate number of minorities who are not pursuing STEM careers, and it's untapped talent. Truly individuals that can do and that will do well in STEM if given the opportunity and if prepared properly to succeed in those spaces.
So I did my high school education in Atlanta. As soon as I graduated, I moved to Houston for college. And I mean, as I stated, STEM was the big push pretty much from 96 to 2000 is when I was in high school. But I guess, like many of us, whether it's this education piece or in general, lots of times when we're in the middle of a situation, we don't see it. But now that I'm an adult, do you feel like STEM has kind of created some disparities when it comes to the educational system or communities, that some schools perform better maybe because of the funding or the overall educational track versus others? What's your take on that? And are there ways to minimize those gaps?
Right. You're dead on. There are disparities. There are disparities depending on your zip code, where you live, particularly in urban corridors where you have high concentrations of economically disadvantaged, disenfranchised people. And also, we can't forget about our rural communities, but it's definitely a disparity. It's a disparity in terms of resources, and resources could be that of teacher quality. It could be the actual hands-on manipulatives of technology, tools and resources that are needed to advance learning, to help students be competitive amongst their peers that are, in different zip codes than themselves, but are soaring and are flying high in those spaces. So there are so many disparities here. And what helps close the gap there in terms of achievement and resources, it's partnerships. It's partnerships with nonprofit organizations, with corporations, for-profit corporations, professional organizations, our colleges and universities, our politicians. It's all of us working collectively, aligning our resources, our dollars, and our talent to really strengthen those schools and those communities that are weaker than others. It's an issue of equity. It's not an issue of equality. And that's what we're having to work harder with, is helping people to understand what equity looks like, because it looks different depending on what your economic situation or status is. And having some empathy in terms of what people are dealing with socially and how that impacts their progress to perform academically and to take hold of opportunities that are available in the STEM space.
Wow. I love everything that you're saying. You're hitting on a lot of things right now. I know in April you have a program that you run. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So every spring we have a culminating event. And this is a culmination of 7 to 8 months where we've worked with students and teachers across 7 states. And we also have a partnership in the Dominican Republic. But the teachers and students work on projects associated with the curriculum we create that's related to a real world issue. It's important to us that students are engaging with math and science and technology in a way that it's relevant to them. They can see how it touches their life. So we create a real problem that they can solve. We give them the tools and resources to solve those challenges, to ensure that equity is there no matter what your school situation is. We're training them and we're supporting them. And then the April competition, or the spring, which it could be in March or April,
okay.
We typically have it before May. And that's the culmination of their work, and they're competing Pre K-12th graders with projects that they've been working on, and they're able to compete nationally and internationally, which is as equally as important as it is to focus on STEM, because we are definitely living in a global marketplace, And our students, and particularly those who are underserved, have got to understand that they're not just competing against or with that student that's sitting side by side or in the next city or state. They're competing with us students that are in other countries. And our schools are very challenged with creating global students, global competitors, students who can not only perform well in STEM, but also can successfully compete for opportunities in those spaces globally.
I understand that. My parents come from Cameroon, and, of course, I was born in the States. Yeah. But even when they were helping me with their homework, my homework, it was just like the methods were different, right? And then, also being surrounded by other Cameroon or even Nigerian African kids in general, or let me just say the culture, whether it's Asians or Indians, education is so, I don't know, it's just an adamant thing. Like, you have to learn, you have to study. And I think also the way that the children are taught different methods, whether it's math or science, it's kind of like they're smarter. I don't know if it's the method that makes them smarter or the discipline, but you can see the difference, especially, I don't like standardized tests. You can definitely see the difference when, test scores and grades come out, and how some cultures, can easily grasp to STEM classes and careers more than some of the American kids.
Well, I would love to speak to that, because you just touched on something that I've been talking a whole lot about this year. And I feel that I can talk about it because I'm married to a Nigerian. So I can definitely speak about it because I had an eye-opener in terms of one of the students in our program received a scholarship. And this was through an organization that does some phenomenal work with getting students that are underserved into high-ranking universities and supporting them in those spaces so that they can not only get accepted into these institutions, but finish, because that's also a challenge with a lot of economically disadvantaged children who've never left home, never left their community. They cannot compete or find comfort in certain environments. Therefore, they end up checking out and transferring out of those institutions, or are not excelling, not completing. But what came to my attention is when they honored these students, there were no Black American students that received the honor, but there were African students and Afro-Caribbean African students that have received this award. And I said, my God, I said, they're able to check the box of saying we did award some Black students this opportunity because they checked the box with those African students and Afro-Caribbean students. But it's really not true. Black American students, there's a difference there. And so what I like to share with a lot of folks is, and I say this in terms of my husband and his family, they're immigrants to this country. But when they came to this country, his father is educated by the best universities there. It might not be recognized here in the U.S., but he's a lawyer, a practicing lawyer in Nigeria. His mother educated with the best British education. And so whether you acknowledge that education here, it is there. And so where it may seem that their children are first generation, they're actually not first generation. They're coming from a dual parent household, and they're coming from a household with parents who are educated, who understand the value of education, and who understand how to put the proper structures and supports in place and expectation so that their children succeed and excel, which is a lot different from a single parent, Black American mother, for example, who's raising 1 or 3 children, or however many, by herself, possibly not educated, may not have finished high school, not understanding the value of education because they didn't have good experiences themselves with education. So they're just totally dependent on, when I send my child to school, they're going to do what's necessary to get my child prepared, and not know how to guarantee or check up on that child, or how to ensure that the child is getting the proper education that they deserve. And so there's a tremendous disparity there. And so when we look at data, and it might look like, oh, we are closing the achievement gap, and there are more Black Americans that are doing things. But in actuality, those boxes are being checked by Africans and Afro-Caribbeans, and the disparity in terms of Black American performance in the space of STEM it's a widening gap.
The challenge within the challenge.
Yes, and in this work, we're never without a challenge, which is why I'm still here. I still haven't found a solution. I'm constantly researching, a new problem and experimenting and piloting a new solution.
I'm speechless just because I've always struggled with my identity, being full-blood African Cameroon parents, but living in America. You go to school for 8 hours and you're at home for the remainder of the time and trying to balance the two worlds. And I remember when my parents would help me with my homework and I'm like, well, that's not how they taught us in class.
Right.
Just being,
that still happens today.
Just being confused and getting the right answer. But now, now that I'm older, it's like I understand how to work backwards. Yeah. I understand how to take a problem inside out and come to a resolution and have multiple methods to get to one answer. And that's, oh my God, it's so important. But once again, when you're young, you don't know anything. 2, when you're in the middle of this problem, be it math, science, life in general, you're just not able to see it.
That's correct.
Wow. All right. So I guess you started off as a teacher and then, now you're running this program and we've discussed some of the challenges, but I guess on the business aspect, what has been a challenge that you've experienced getting this program running for the past 10 plus years?
Right. So let's start with, as you mentioned, when you were in school, STEM was a focus. And I don't know if you were in a program that was called STEM, but there were probably programs that focused on STEM. Like I can remember there was a program called SECME, and SECME focused on math and science and engineering. And it was an acronym. It stood for the Southeastern Consortium of Minorities in Engineering. There were so many programs like that were out there and that are still out there actually, but there were no programs that were called STEM or CSTEM, as the name of the program. And so when I started this organization and we stepped out and I started to go into the community and ask for support, I was met with so much opposition. And that opposition was because people thought that I was doing stem cell research and they would not help me. And so the brand of that name, CSTEM, was a challenge early on because I had to educate everyone every time about what I was doing. My office phone would ring because people were thinking we were a stem cell research laboratory. So, it was really tough. There were even states that would not work with me because it was against the law to do business with anyone who had that in the name of their business. And so that was a challenge for me, but we did rise above it, and I'm glad that I did stick with it. The other thing is, finding the funding and the resources that are necessary to sustain yourself over time and having the proper network to do that. When I started this business, and I want to call it a business, it's a nonprofit organization, but I didn't look at it as a business. I looked at it as a charity, but in order to sustain a charity, you've got to run it like a business. Well, I'm a scientist with no business training, with a lot of passion and want to help a lot of folks. And so I did a lot of on-the-job training and have had some real tough lessons in terms of how to build partnerships that last, that are sustainable, how to put together a good board and champions for the organization and the work in the community, how to build the relationships with corporate funders so that they can see and feel the return on their investment in your work in the community. It's been a very interesting and exciting journey because I love learning, and being in this role, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly developing, and I was truly playing a blank canvas when I started this work, just coming straight from, I worked 10 years in a school district. I was a classroom teacher, guidance counselor, assistant principal, then a school improvement facilitator. So I could administrate anything and I could teach, but could I successfully really write a strong proposal to get, funding past 5,000. That was a struggle, to get to a place where I can say we have an operational budget of nearly $1 million. I never thought I would say that because I started with a personal bank loan to run a nonprofit. Who does that? That's insanity. Who takes out a small business loan to open up a charity? So that lets you see my mindset of how much development I had to do to become the leader of this organization today.
So I'm young, fairly young, right? I mean, I'm impressed by your resume. So you're going over the challenges, but what has been the highlight? What has been one or two very significant milestones that have said, you know what, it's worth it and I'm going to keep pushing?
I'm going to tell you, every year that I am still open and servicing children and teachers, that is so significant. I tell people the name of the game is to stay in the game. You never know when things are going to turn for you. It's not always easy, but you've got to know how to sustain your body of work in the downtimes and celebrate, of course, in the high times. But for me, what's so significant is every year that I'm able to turn that corner and close that chapter and say, we did it. We were able to touch, these many children and these many teachers and these many, this amount of communities. But that's really important to me because it's hard to stay in business. And I look around every day at businesses that are closing down and nonprofits that are having to close their door. And so I'm forever grateful that I have been enterprising enough to continue to reinvent myself as a leader of this organization to keep our doors open and to continue to serve our clients well, which are our students and our teachers. And so when I look at that and every day that I'm able to walk into this office, I feel I'm just so charged. But I can say in these nearly 15 years, I guess the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me beyond, of course, the achievement of my students, was being honored by the White House. I think that's the one thing that I'm most proud of. One is I was nominated for this award by a former intern in our program. And two, to be able to have the opportunity to visit with the vice president in his home and to say that, wow, I couldn't have, ever imagined, in all of my life and my journey that that's where I would be at the White House and that I would be receiving an honor, that they would be recognizing my work. My past is that, I come from a very challenging childhood. My mother's a recovering addict. My father was absent. I failed the second grade, made it to fifth grade, couldn't multiply. It was definitely my teachers, the latter years of elementary, I'll say fifth grade, that started to turn things around for me. And my teachers who stayed with me all the way through to get me in college. And so when I look at that past and being at the White House just last year, you couldn't have told me that coming up from where, I grew up, being the woman I am today and having a PhD. I wouldn't have ever dreamed this could be possible. So that kind of, what greater honor can you receive than that of the leader of the free world?
Right. Well, congratulations. Wow. That's awesome. So you mentioned this a couple of times about networking, collaborations from individuals to corporations, donors, and all of that's important. Obviously that's what I'm about. My message is networking. But can you talk about how do you go about selecting a collaborator? Are you intentional when it comes to finding a corporation, or is it just whoever wants to write the check? I think lots of times, we get caught up, because we, cash flow is crazy. And it's like, okay, who's going to write the check right now, right?
Yeah,
but you have to also be attentive to, your message, the company's message, and hopefully there's some alignment between the two. So can you just talk about maybe some qualities that you look for, whether it's from an individual or a corporate collaboration, and how you proceed with that?
Sure. I tell you, of course, early on in this work, I would take money from wherever I can get the money. It was just, in terms of donors and corporations, it wasn't so much strategic, right? It was just, there's a grant this company or corporation or organization has, I'm going to write for it. And I woke up and said, one year I woke up and I said, gosh, I was so exhausted. I said, I think I've been networking every single day. I've written about 50,000 proposals, and I think I may have gotten a 20% return. And I said, I've been networking in all the wrong places, and I realized the power of relationships and being purposeful in that what I'm doing with seeking partnerships and seeking relationships. So I don't go after every dollar. I don't get excited when I hear about an RFP or an opportunity. I really have to take time to, one, get to know who's offering the opportunity, but also sharing who we are and what we do. There have been situations where there have been a donor or donors that have wanted to compromise or, take us away from our mission. And I've had to say no, and that's not necessarily easy to do. Particularly, in the nonprofit space, we're never short on need. And we're not short on problems to solve, but we're always short on funding, and that translates into human capital. We don't necessarily have the human capital to support the work that we need to do in the community. So you have to have the capacity to say no in those instances, and you've got to have that entrepreneurial drive to do what's necessary to reinvent yourself, to be creative, to become lean in your operations, in your model, to sustain yourself in those times when you may have had to not accept the contribution. I'm very strategic in how I form partnerships, and I am very committed to the mission of this organization, this work, and I won't waver from it. And to a point of, if that means giving up my salary, I'm just that committed, which is sickening, particularly to my husband when I said, I'm taking myself off payroll for 6 months. And he's like, you need to get a job. So, because you have a hobby, you don't have a job. And so it's a constant struggle. It's something that I'm constantly working and towards finding a better way so that I'm not always compromising myself. But I believe so much in this work, and I've seen how it touched the lives of children. And I know that if we're not there for them, there's no one else there to provide them this opportunity. Now, will they still be fine? Yes, some of them will. But will they go into STEM, or will they know about these opportunities? Probably not, because we're not there to advocate for them. So that's been my method that I've employed over the years to help keep us going.
So I love everything you said, and this just came to me when you said, will they go into STEM? One thing I realized is that because there's the big push of STEM and engineers, and we're in a money-driven society, and you may be biased, and that's fine. I just want to get your take on this. There's been a lack of appreciation and funding when it comes to the arts, to the creatives, as if they get ignored. Do you think there's room for both of them? And what are some suggestions for a student or even a parent to kind of balance that with their child?
Well, let me tell you, whether many people don't know because the acronym is not included, but there is a new wave of organizations or initiatives that have added the A in STEM to call it STEAM. But what people need to know, and I'm glad you asked this question, is that STEM embodies all of that. You don't have to not do the arts because you're doing STEM. You don't have to not do music because you're doing STEM. It's all integrated. And so within our program, for example, we have our kids producing films, doing photography, painting murals, doing sculptures, 3D printing. We had a sci-fi jazz musician that came to perform for our kids who made his instruments from a 3D printer. So all of this is STEM, but for whatever reason, there's been early on in this movement, there was such a focus on STEM that the arts were left out, that English language arts was left out, literacy. And that's the CNC STEM. English is tied to math and science. If you can't read and write, you can't do math and science, and so are the arts. And so I equally love the arts, and I engulf our children in those types of experiences as much as possible because it brings them balance. It's a way of life, and if you've never seen it, you go on our website, you will see our tagline is everyone is an artist and an engineer. We believe that. It's a little bit of Da Vinci in each and every one of us.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for just bringing insight to that. I know when I was growing up, of course, I got African parents, so they were strict. But it was just school, right? It was right. No sports. It was no arts. There was no balance. It was just right. School. I mean, I love learning. I probably read more books now than when I was in college. But, it's just, it took me a while to become a balanced person because there is so much emphasis on being a pharmacist that I never became. So I took that path off. Then I ended up with a couple of business degrees. Yeah. Right. So we're about to wrap up here. Just a few more questions. Can you say, are there any apps or resources that you just absolutely love that you use in your business, or even if you're able to translate that over into your program for the kids?
Sure. I am always looking for innovative tools that are going to help us work smart. It's all about working lean, working smart, using technology to save on time and resources. I would say that one of the best things I could have done is I started using a free platform called Asana. It's ASANA if you're not familiar with it. And you can have up to 25 team members on there working with you at a time on a project. And we use this to communicate the different work we're doing and how our work collaborates and connect with each other within our organization. Because at any time we can have up to maybe 25 different contractors or interns as well as staff that are working with us to make things happen for our schools and our teachers. And so that has been a great tool. So I'll definitely say if folks haven't looked into that, definitely look into Asana, and it helps you, look at the analytics of your work and your meeting timelines and how efficient you are and how much time you're spending on a task. So if you need to work, smarter or see that you're on something for an extended amount of time, you might need to put more persons on that project, but definitely can evaluate your success and your work performance. It's also accessible on the app. So I would say that is a great tool. It's a great tool that I have found for presentations when presenting to funders and exploring corporate partnerships or even leveraging other partners in this space of work. I have such tools as eMaze or Prezi for presentations. And there's PictoChart. I love tech and I love any hot new something that allows me to graphically or in a video form, like a video scribe that helps me tell the story and get the message out there and also help us communicate who we are and what we're doing. So those are a few things that I've used and not just used to help the organization run, but also share with our teachers so they can integrate these tools into their classrooms. And we also have our own social site. We have CSTEM Break, which is our version of a Facebook. And so CSTEM Break is our STEM social media site. So our teachers, our students are on there. They're blogging. They're looking for camps, internships, scholarships. They're looking for information and sharing information about the projects that they're working on and videos. And it's pretty dynamic site. And there's a mobile app that's attached to that as well. And it's all free and it's open to the world.
So you mentioned technology. I know we're trying to wrap up here. I'm sorry. I had a chance to listen to, is it Rhonda Schiller-Jones?
Yes.
Okay.
School board trustee.
Yeah, I've listened to her several times. So I'm interested on your take on this. How do you feel about technology in the classroom? Going from books to tablets when it comes to reading. One thing she has mentioned is that, we need to get back to the basics. We need to get back to the basics and open up a hardcover book.
Yes. So, in life, everything is about balance, right? And technology is critical because that's how it helps us really work smarter and wiser and helps us communicate more effectively and faster. But what we can't do is we can't, take the pendulum and sway it far to the right with technology and get rid of textbooks. Now, I am aware that HISD has adopted new books, and they will all be ebooks for their students. They will no longer give them a hard copy textbook. Now, there will be some challenges with that, right? And that you now will train up a generation that do not know or have any interest in picking up a hardcover textbook.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a challenge. And we do have to find a way to balance that. But then, on the other side of that is when you're talking about getting back to the basics, I'm also aware that you have schools that have textbooks who won't give the children textbooks because they have such textbook loss rate and it impacts their budget that they won't even risk giving a child a book because they have no confidence that they're going to return the textbook. And so, when we talk about getting back to the basics, if you're not giving the books anyway, so you might as well give them an ebook, because I'd rather them have an ebook than no textbook at all.
Yeah,
I've been in schools where they have pristine book rooms because the books are just in there glistening on a shelf and they've never been touched by a child. And of course, that depends on the community, that these types of things are happening. But we do have to find balance, and we do need to get to a place where our teachers are comfortable with integrating technology and our students are used to integrating technology into the learning process, but that they're taught how to do it appropriately and that there's appropriate time to plan and insert it in a way that it is useful. There's so much fear that you're giving them a computer and they're going to go to a site that's not appropriate, that they're immediately going to something that's not appropriate. Well, you train the kids up into what you want them to be. And then, of course, at the end of the day, it's not the child's fault. It's the teacher, it's the parent, it's the leadership. It's how we put systems in place, how we put safeguards in place, and how we're monitoring and engaging with the students to redirect them when they may stray off course.
Right. So what's in store for the next 6 to 12 months?
The next 6 to 12 months, my goal is to flip CSTEM upside down on its head. So please check in and make sure that I'm not upside down on my head. So my goal is I have developed an organization that's pretty driven by schools or teachers. I want CSTEM to become an organization to where it is driven by kids, that is self-directed by students are self-directed in their learning, that they are registering to be in CSTEM, that it's not dependent on their teacher to enroll them in CSTEM, it's not dependent on their parents, that a child can say, I want to be in this competition, and I'm going to go on CSTEM Break, the social network, I'm going to become a member, I'm going to get the form, I'm going to take it to my teacher, take it to my parent, get them to sign off, and I'm going to join this STEM competition because I want to compete nationally and I want to compete globally. And that they own that process themselves. So that's what's next for me, is creating a process to where I am not having to go into a school and necessarily say, please do this with your students. I want the students to be so interested and so hungry and so passionate about what CSTEM is offering that they're registering themselves.
So I want to commend you for the contribution that you have given, not just to Houston, but to society as a whole. We all know that education is so important, but the way you're packaging it is just allowing us to take it to another level and explore that opportunity. And with that, I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the awesome work you're doing. And this is just amazing to have this opportunity to share with you and your interest in sharing what so many are doing in the world. It's just something to be commended, and it's truly a gift and a blessing. So thank you for all that you're doing.
So before we go, how can people get in touch with you, and how do you define success?
People can contact me directly through my email, rflowers@cstem.org. They can visit our website and contact us there at cstem.org. They can call us at our office, 713-443-4521. And success, gosh, how do I define it? Guys, finishing what you start.
Dr. Flowers, once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being so generous with your knowledge. I'm doing this, I'm leading with your episode because this is my way to give back to the community, to give back to Houston. And as I rally behind you on this episode, I want the community, I want the city to rally behind you on what you're trying to do. So I'm going to make sure that we push this through all the channels, as many as possible, to get this message out because it's so important. If you're listening on iTunes, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you are blessed by this episode, please share it with someone, share it with the child, share it with the parent. It's so important that this message gets out. And as always, remember, a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thank you for networking with Michelle.